great leaders adapt to their situation. People say, well, I just want to be myself. It's inauthentic not to be myself.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth to that, but I think the bigger question is like, doesn't every great leader understand their audience? When a CEO says something like, well, I know that having engaged employees is important, but like we have other priorities. And I think like, what bigger priority is than your humans that work for you every day? If people aren't your priority, I guarantee you your organization is not going to perform well over time. It comes back to time. Shouldn't it be good? Shouldn't you want to invest your time in something that like speaks to you right here?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, Chaz Wolfe. And today we are joined by James Lawrence, the CEO of Happy, a platform that's transforming organizational culture from college dropout to industry leader. James's journey is a story of humility, personal growth, and embracing servant leadership. Get ready because we go deep on culture. James Lawrence, welcome to the King's stage. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Chaz. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man. We're going to have an interesting conversation. We always have interesting conversations, but you have a unique business, not like another one that I've had on the show, actually. So tell us, what is Happy? What do you do?
Well, I get the elevator pitch right away, Chaz.
Come on now.
So I will ask you a question. Can I turn the tables on you?
Oh, okay. All right. I'm defensive now, but okay.
Okay. So how long have you been working?
Ooh, like in my life?
Yeah, like first time scooping ice cream as like 14-year-old kid, high school.
Yeah. Picked up a concrete hammer or a shovel or a form probably at 13 years old.
Okay. So in total, like
24 years.
24 years. And then how many different like jobs or bosses have you had? Like how many different environments have you been in?
Goodness. Let's say a dozen.
Okay. So 24 years, a dozen bosses. So I'm imagining you've never had in that whole time frame seen any challenges with people, right?
Never.
Like,
not once, actually.
No different ways of doing things.
Nope. They came all out of the same box, actually.
Yeah. So no conflict, no disagreements about, so that's what Happy does.
Got it.
And so, we just apply behavioral science and AI to helping humans work together at work.
Love it.
So that's our elevator pitch.
Here's a question for you, James. When I think about harmony, or as you said, maybe alignment, or however we want to dress this up, we can work together, but I find that when there's a common definite purpose, right? So in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill defines the mastermind principle as two or more minds working in harmony unto specifically a definite chief aim. And so for harmony's sake or alignment's sake, how important is that, like that one singular focus that we're both working on so that we can maybe overcome some of the conflict or work together in a scenario? How does that play into all of this in your mind?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think where I start answering that is I think everybody knows what a poor team alignment looks like. And I think, I got a chance to spend a lot of time talking to CEOs, and we can talk about that later in the show, but I got a chance in 2020 and 19 to like meet with more than 500 CEOs and like VPs of people and heads of human resources. And it's like what you just asked is one of the questions I actually ask. So I have to say it's a darn good question, Chaz.
Yeah.
But it was like the way I said it was like, what does a win look to you? Like, what's a victory look like to you with your team? And, you mentioned harmony earlier. I think like mission alignment is really important. And so I think like that North Star of like what we're looking for, and whether it's, getting there through the Happy platform or understanding, a DISC assessment or leadership coaching, but it's what can we accomplish together? And it's got to be like 1 + 1 = 3, right? Or if you've got 6 people in your leadership team, it's like, we don't want, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 2. And, a team that's not effective is a detractor. And
Sure.
I'll tell you one line real quick. Sometimes you hear CEOs say something like, I couldn't do this without my team. Or, the team is more important than any one individual, me included. And to me, that's when I know that like a team is going to drive toward good outcomes. And then I think the opposite is, well, I have to make all the calls because, I don't have a very good team, or my leadership team isn't right, or, they don't have the information they need, or I don't trust them. And so suddenly now you've got a CEO surrounding him or herself with 7 or 8 people in the leadership team, or you have a manager that's surrounding themselves with people, but they're making all the calls anyways because
Yep.
they don't have the right people or they don't trust them or there's not alignment.
Yep.
And that's really like a waste of human capital. But,
Yeah.
that's a team that's not functioning right. Is, you've got, someone that just is making all of the decisions and doesn't trust the people around them.
Yeah, the principle that you're talking about here is known, right? Maybe even cliche, which is like, well, yeah, of course, like the leader who makes all the decisions, like we know that that's bad. Everything that you said probably isn't hitting the listener going, oh my gosh, that's revolutionary. But they still do it. And so what I mean by that is oftentimes I find even in entrepreneurs who are, 50 or less people, you're talking about in corporations that have probably 100 plus people, both ways, I find it's this person, entrepreneur or leader in an organization who's doing too much, right? And they don't know how to maybe leverage teamwork or cohesion or alignment or harmony. And so then therefore they're just a pretty strong individual. That's probably how they got into leadership or business ownership to begin with. And they're just like thrusting themselves forward and everybody else is just kind of trying to hold on. And it doesn't really ever work out that way. Can you speak to this for a little while? I mean, why do we keep doing this as entrepreneurs?
Well, I've made all those mistakes.
Me too.
I mean, and still make them. I mean,
Yeah.
There's no perfect leader. But no, I mean, you're right. I don't think any of this is groundbreaking. What I do think is, I mean, I want to comment something you said earlier, which is you were talking about like different organizations and like different size organizations. So it's like when I first started talking to CEOs, like I was a CEO myself for 20 plus years and mainly in the automotive space. And I worked with a lot of CEOs already. But in 2019, 2020, when I was researching Happy, one of the things that I did was I made a commitment every day. I put probably 30 or 40 small groups together, kind of like mini little mastermind groups, but mainly for research purposes. And I said, like, I'm going to talk to 5 CEOs a week and I'm going to ask them some questions because I was really passionate about creating Happy back then. That's when we really started doing a lot of our research. And I thought I had this perception, like, big businesses have figured this out. So if you're like a Fortune 500 company or you're a big FANG company, you're in Silicon Valley, you've been in business 30 years, like you figure this people thing out. Like people, oh yeah, you're good. Like little companies, 100, 200 employees, small businesses, startups, like they probably like trying to navigate through this people thing. So I'm like talking to these CEOs and I'm talking to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And I go, well, tell me a little bit about your people. And you've probably got this all figured out and tell me about like, I ask one question, which is like, so when your people get hired, like, tell me about your onboarding process. Like the work relationships that occur between your different employees. Like, is that up to them to figure out? Or like, do you have an entire process of like onboarding someone? And it's like, you know what? These big companies, they're way more screwed up than the little ones. Yeah. I mean, the CEOs were like, no, we're too big. I mean, and so in a lot of cases, these larger organizations had bigger people problems than the companies that were 500 people.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to a very simple thing. People are messy. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like the people business is not easy. And in big companies, largely employees are just left to figure out their work relationships on their own, kind of dependent on their department head or whoever whoever runs that division. But it's not always pretty.
No, I would say most times it's not, unless I have been in situations and built companies of my own, even where it's more put together. I wouldn't call it pretty, but maybe a little bit more organized. And so let's use this as a transition to talk about Happy. I mean, it starts with a simple assessment, like there's many others that you mentioned, but this idea of being able to take a look at someone and their traits or who they are, there are so many benefits to this. And the rest of the show, we're going to go deep on this because this is, I feel like for me personally, like if I can identify why individually Chaz Wolfe has been successful, one, it's been from personal development, but inside of that, I know who I am, like truly to the core because of assessments like Happy. I can just not only self-reflect, but I can just be honest with myself and then I can modify. And so we're going to talk about this, but give us an idea. What's the Happy assessment look like? Why does someone take it? What do they do with the results? Let's start there.
Can I talk about myself in the third person, because if I can do that, I'm going to be happier in this podcast.
Let's go. Talk about this amazing guy named James for me, if you don't mind.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, what's funny is, we have developed our own assessment. It's, based on DISC, which is, probably the most popular behavioral assessment in the world. It's used by 3/4 of the Fortune 500, most of the branches of the US military, but there's a lot of great assessments out there. And, we started working 20 years ago with DISC from a company called TTI, and, TTI's got great assessments. And so, assessments are kind of like a religion. Like if I started convincing you that my assessment was better than your assessment, it's like, we're kind of getting into like, you're Protestant, I'm Catholic. Like, well, let's go toe to toe on this. Yeah. So it's not a religion like that we're all that interested in winning. The fact that anybody uses assessments is a win. Like you talked about self-awareness. Right. Self-awareness is a really critical part of becoming a great leader or a manager or developing your own business. And so, I mean, the first thing is like, I think assessments are fantastic tools, if you're invested in them. We've got a little bit of a unique view, and I'll kind of just explain it to you like this. And it takes about 30 seconds, but we are a technology, a platform that a company installs, and all of their employees go into the Happy platform, and everybody takes this 10-minute assessment. It asks you, 30 or 40 questions. It doesn't take very long. And as part of asking you those questions, it understands your work style. And once it understands the work style of everybody in the company, it can then render advice, insights, and guidance to each person that's personalized and contextual to them. And I'm going to give you an example. Chaz, give me somebody you work with at work every day or every week.
Yeah, Sandy Elliott. She was just on the screen here a few minutes ago.
Sandy, I love Sandy. So if you and I and Sandy work together and you looked up Sandy's Happy profile and you looked her work style up, and I looked up Sandy and looked up her work style, we would see some of the same things, but the insights and guidance that it would actually show up on your screen and the insights and guidance that would show up on my screen would be different because you and I are different people. Sure. And so the way Happy works is because it understands everybody's work style, it provides personalized guidance and insights. So it's essentially like an assessment, but that's personalized and contextualized to each person. So it actually gives you unique advice because you need different advice on working with Sandy than I do.
Interesting.
So that's the first thing that sometimes people don't really understand about Happy is the secret sauce isn't really in the assessment per se, but it's in the contextualization.
Yeah.
Because I'll give you an example. If you're a type A personality, which I'm not saying you are, but let's say you're a type A personality and Sandy wants somebody to be, the right thing to Sandy is she likes honest, candid conversation. And the advice to you in Sandy's assessment is, Chaz, you need to be, honest and transparent and bold with her. Well, you're already that. So now you turn into a crazy person because it's telling you to go even more, type A on her. Right. That's bad advice. What it might actually say is, Chaz, you're already pretty transparent and candid with her. Make sure to do, but she also likes data. So it might say something like, we know you're going to be candid, but make sure you bring a few pieces of data to the table when you have a meeting with her. Now, I might be a data person. It doesn't need to tell me to bring data. I do that naturally. So it wouldn't be like, James, remember to bring a bunch of data to your meeting with Sandy, because it's like, I already do that. But it might say like, hey, James, make sure that you're frank and open with Sandy. And so really what Happy is all about is contextualized, personalized advice. And one of the things that is interesting about learning in humans is when you really study like how people learn, like I'm going to play a little, play along with you. Can I ask you another question?
Of course. Yeah. Love this.
So tonight at 8 p.m., Chaz, I would like to ask you if you would like to participate in a 3-hour seminar on negotiating with Japanese business people. 7:00 tonight. Okay. Are you interested?
Possibly.
Okay. It might be 4 hours, 7 to 11.
7 to 11. It less possible, but still possible.
Okay. So maybe your intellectual curiosity is like, hey, that'd be pretty cool. Like, I'd like to actually learn how to negotiate better with Japanese business people.
Yep.
But you're like, now I can't watch NCIS with my like spouse. I can't play with my kids. Like
Right.
it means I have no dinner. Right. So like, but tell me very plainly, what is it about what I just asked you that made you go like, man, that's a waste of my time? Like, why
Yeah.
didn't you think that?
Well, I didn't know the context of the situation, or more specifically, what I would be learning there, although I was
Right.
open to whatever it was.
So let's say you and I were flying in the morning to Tokyo and we were negotiating a $10 million deal
Right.
with two Japanese business people that we'd never met before. How attractive would the 4-hour seminar be tonight that we were going to have?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't get enough of it.
Right. So the difference is context, right? So the way the human brain works is it learns, it's fascinated by learning when there's an application. And you and I just wrapped on that. Like, you know that to be true anyways, but you really know it because we just went through a little exercise on it.
Yeah.
So learning how to, for example, learning a little bit more about, let's say, Tom in accounting. If it's like, hey, would you like to spend some more time learning about how Tom in accounting works? You might be like, maybe. But when Tom has rejected your expense report for the 6th time in a row and you're like ready to, march into Tom's office and freak out, it might be really useful right at that moment for you to learn how to work through a conflict with Tom.
Yeah.
That's what happy is all about. It's not the unique secret sauce in the assessment. It's contextualized learning. It's like, how do I learn at the moment I need it and apply it to like something at work?
Right. And so using this example here of Tom in accounting, I'm frustrated. I log into my happy platform and I like type in there somewhere that I'm going to go meet with Tom, and I'm frustrated, and kind of like ChatGPT, it's going to send me some advice. Is that what I'm understanding, or is it a little different than that?
Yeah, I mean, it does do that, but
Okay.
actually more likely is if you're in Microsoft Teams, it actually knows you're meeting with Tom because it monitors your calendar. And it actually, about an hour before your meeting, sends you tips on meeting with Tom before you actually have to do anything.
Wow.
So the
Check.
way the tech works is, we have this little saying, which is like the right piece of advice at the right time, at the right moment, and to the right person. And so like, I will say like our technology is relatively new. We're about a year old. So some of this is like an ideal state. Like a lot of what I'm talking about, what we have, but in the perfect world, we're anticipating, the human interaction you're having. So the technology, Happy's platform already understands who you're working with. So you can go through and like build a team and go like, hey, I'm going to follow Sandy. I'm going to follow Tom. Like I'm going to go follow a few people, but we use some technology called Smart Follow. And so it's kind of our own proprietary technology, and we understand who you're working with in the organization. So if you're using Teams, Slack, email, Google products, like we understand who you're interacting with. And so we're delivering coaching to you and insights already on the people you're working with.
Yeah.
And so, so the technology is smart enough to like understand who's in your cohort. And sometimes it'll give you coaching on somebody you don't want. It'll make a suggestion. You can be like, hey, I only work with Tom for a couple of months and then I don't work with Tom anymore. So you can like unfollow Tom for coaching, or you might have somebody new in your team that gets hired and you might be like, well, I just want to proactively follow them. But I mean, the ultimate goal here is this technology works in the background.
Yeah.
So you can go look it up. Like if you're going to go have a review with your boss and you're like, hey, or I'm like, I have a really important meeting. You can go like, or I want to pitch an idea. Let's say like you're meeting with the CEO and you're like, hey, I'd like to prepare for that. You can like go to the coach tool and go like, hey, I'm going to pitch an idea to the CEO, and it'll give you guidance on how to do that. Yeah. But a lot of it's just like, how naturally can we integrate into the flow of work?
Yeah. I love the technology piece there. I have not seen another platform do that. So kudos to you. I love that you're spearing this into really all the assessment world, because the assessment world has changed leadership and people communication and all that. I want to use this opportunity to go, okay, so it's an hour before my meeting. I get this little note, right? Personally, Chaz Wolfe right now doesn't have this technology, so I can't do that. But what I can do is I can go to my assessment. I can go, okay, I'm going to meet with James. Here's his assessment. based on my knowledge, I can kind of, maneuver this thing together. What's our topic? So manually I'm doing this. You
Yeah,
have it in
sure.
technology, which is amazing. But I've called this scenario modification. But you're sending me information to tell me how to adjust or adapt or modify in that meeting what we think is a good outcome of like working together and conflict resolution and, harmony. But it is telling me to change. What if I don't want to change? What if I don't think that that's authentic? Why can't I just be me? Why can't I just show up to the meeting? Help me understand.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in two parts. So the first part is, you brought up a great example of you doing this manually. And I would say like that's how people have been doing this for a very long time, right? Is like, hey, I'm having some conflict with someone and like, can I get access to their DISC assessment or their culture index or whatever assessment that exists? And I'm going to read theirs and look at mine. And I'm going to kind of like do some jujitsu to figure out like how to work better with them. Right.
Yeah.
Um, but
The
I
good
think the ideal
jujitsu,
state's
but
a little, yeah, mental jujitsu.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think the ideal state is a little different. I think you just hit on it, which is you asked like, what if I don't want to change? And I think the first thing is that there's different levels of self-awareness, right? And what you just described is like you have a real commitment to, or you've seen value, like you've seen value in the jujitsu, right? Like you have challenged yourself to understand yourself and then ask yourself, okay, I've gotten good outcomes by learning how others like to work and then maybe adapting to their style. And so you've gotten some really good outcomes. And so you continue to do it because it makes your work output better. It helps you build your business. And that's a beautiful thing. I think I want to say one thing is I think Happy's trying to solve a little different problem, which is trying to get rid of the jujitsu and just kind of giving you like the Karate Kid approach. Like, you're not having to think about necessarily what to do because Happy is kind of seeing around a corner for you. And then over time, you're going to start learning how to work with those around you, like because you're getting good outcomes. So for example, I'm going to give you a quick example and then I'm going to answer your original question. Have you ever walked into a meeting and had the person in the meeting be relatively quiet?
Yeah.
So a lot of people that are outgoing or extroverted or like me, I talk with my hands. I might have walked into a meeting at the age of 25 and had somebody be very quiet and analytical and think, I might have walked out of that meeting and said, Chaz, I don't think Betsy likes me.
Yeah.
And all Betsy did was just listen. Like Betsy was being Betsy, which was being an analyst and listening and observing. And I was being, a core D in DISC, Mr. Super extroverted and going, well, she didn't talk a lot. I don't think she really gets me. And that's a fatal flaw. That's thinking everybody looks at the world like I do. Yeah. And so in the Happy world, we don't have to give you all that information. We can just say something really simple to you before your meeting. Betsy tends to listen a lot. Don't be surprised if she takes a lot of notes in the meeting. That little nudge to us is the difference in building relationships because it's giving you a little context on who Betsy is and how Betsy likes to look at the world. And you don't go into that meeting and you don't walk out of it going like, man, Betsy doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, I know you didn't graduate college at 21 and become super emotionally intelligent. Like you've probably been through some pain to get to where you are.
Yeah.
So I think solving that equation, that's like the heavy lift, right? Is like, how do we make it so you don't have to necessarily wake up and be like, man, I really want to change and I want to be self-aware. It's like Cliff Notes, just makes your life easier. So I know I answered your question with a very circular question. I don't know if you found that interesting.
No, it was super good. I think the feedback there for the listener is, one, not everybody looks at the world like you do. Like we know that, but in situations that you just gave super plainly, we forget because we're seeing things through our lens only. When we have the ability to see things from the other person's lens, it basically just gives them permission to be them. And now we can take it a step further and go, okay, now we're not just coworkers and maybe you're giving me a little tip to work better. as a leader, I've always taken it as my responsibility to not meet them in the middle, but to hop over the fence and come all the way to them. It's my responsibility, right? And so what that has meant for me, in this case right here, like I'm leading this show. I am not an extrovert on a piece of paper. I'm a learned extrovert, or I'm modifying, as we talked about before, right? So how boring would this show be if I just didn't have much energy, right? And maybe there's shows like that, but not about success. And so as I'm coming over the table, wherever you are, now you're an extrovert, so it's easy, but it's my responsibility to come to you. So let's talk about it from a leadership perspective, right? So it's not just like the little tips to give like the other person like room, but it's like now it's a responsibility as a leader, in my opinion, to like make this meeting the best it can be. And if that requires me to modify so that Betsy can listen and take good notes and whatever, because she's going to get the same tips that you are about me. But as a leader, I still think it's my responsibility. Talk about from a leadership perspective is what I'm trying to get you to get to.
Well, you're totally right. I mean, great leaders adapt to their situation. And it doesn't mean that like, hey, there's always that moment where you've got to have that goat on the mountaintop moment where like, you might have to motivate, inspire. And you hear this a lot of times, Chaz, when people say, well, I just want to be myself. It's inauthentic not to be myself.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth to that, but I think the bigger question is like, doesn't every great leader understand their audience?
Yeah.
Like to me, great leadership is about understanding what someone needs from you. And like, I know this isn't super in vogue, but like, I'm a big fan of like historical great leaders, like Vince Lombardi. I love football. And like, I really am a student of Vince Lombardi. And like, a lot of people didn't understand Vince Lombardi. Like he kind of over time kind of got this reputation of a hard ass coach where he drove his players really hard. And, kind of like in cultural folklore, people are like, well, you can't coach like Vince Lombardi coaches anymore. Like, players today are different. Well, if you actually go back and look at what Vince Lombardi said about his players, I don't remember how many players were on a football team back in the 60s. But let's just say it was 50 or 80. There's many quotes where Vince Lombardi said, I have 50 men on my football team and I treat them as 50 unique people. Or saying something like, my team is comprised of 50 individuals. And in one of the biographies on Vince, it said, he knew he had this art of knowing when to put his arm around somebody and quietly talk to them and when to light them up in front of the team.
Love it.
And he said, like, I forgot the name of his like famous offensive lineman, but he had like 2 offensive linemen that like, he said that I knew after a bad game, I had to like in front of the whole locker room, I had to dress those guys down and they would come out the next game and they would just dominate. Right. But his quarterback, he couldn't do that with. If he did that to his quarterback would go in the tank, wouldn't perform. And what he had to do with his quarterback is put his arm around him, go for a walk around the, stadium and talk to him. And that's no different, right? That kind of leadership is no different than's happening in 2024. Yeah. Know your people, right? If you invest in knowing your people and treat them all as individuals, like you're just going to get better performance, right? Or you're going to win more Super Bowls.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, well, I love that. Well, let's talk about this unique. I haven't had a chance to bring this up in a podcast yet, but since you're a football fan and a Super Bowl mention there, we've got Travis Kelce yelling at Andy Reid in the Super Bowl just a few weeks ago. I'm in Kansas City. Chiefs fans love what's going on, but the rest of the world was like, "Who is this maniac?" And talk about the moment there that happened. And then the subsequent moment that happened later where Andy then followed up with it with a little bit of, shoulder bump to Travis a few minutes later. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I coach football, youth football, and, you wouldn't want to see me on the football field sometimes, Chaz. It's like how the sausage is made isn't always the prettiest thing.
That's right.
There's a beauty of the game of football, of a mixture of strategy, passion, effort, motivation, technique, physical skill. But football games are won by teamwork. It's not collections of people, right? And I actually think a football team is a great analogy for a business, right? Like, your CEO and your leadership team develops a playbook. So do coaches. You walk out of the locker room, hopefully everybody sees eye to eye on the playbook. They might not all agree with it. There's 20 coaches. They might not all agree with it. When they walk out of that room, they coach that playbook. They coach their players. They're in alignment. That's what a great leadership team should do.
Yeah.
Now,
that's good.
It's not like there's not going to be any disagreements. I mean, well, you just mentioned, like, hey, there's a lot of passion on the field, right? Mm-hmm. And, football maybe is a little different than, the average business. But Travis Kelce cares. And one of the things that I love, look, I have to warn you, I'm a LA Chargers fan. I've had Chargers season tickets for 22 years. But I am a huge fan of what the Chiefs have done, their dynasty. I hate to say it, but I've got a quote from Bill Belichick on the back of one of my race cars because we race cars too for fun.
I love it.
And, there's the most important thing is passion and engagement. And like, sometimes it's not the prettiest process, but like, there's a lot of respect that underlies those players' relationship with Andy Reid. And, a lot of people didn't understand that one of the reasons that Andy Reid is so respected is because he's created an environment of psychological safety for his team where they can be honest with him.
Yep,
that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes safety is about honesty. And in the moment, it's not always the prettiest thing, but would it have been better if Travis Kelce hadn't said anything? Like, would have the Chiefs have won that game if he hadn't said anything or he hadn't had that moment?
Maybe not. Yeah. It's tough in those moments as leaders because it takes probably experience, but then tools like Happy to be able to really train this in us. And so even just keeping this example here with Andy Reid, it's like his initial reaction wasn't to turn around and, tackle Travis and bite his head off and tell him, don't ever embarrass me in front of the world. He basically allowed space, right? Knowing Travis's profile, whatever that big, excited, passionate, outspoken, dominant winner profile is that he has, he gave him space. He let him do his thing. It even caught him a little off guard, like physically, and he kind of just did his, walked over. But then later, he came up to him like a good leader, like a good dad, like a good, hey, bro, don't ever do that again. But, go freaking win. Like, the reason why I called that is because you probably made a knucklehead move or whatever he said, they got back into alignment and he drew that passion back in. He let it go out of the lines a little bit, but then he refocused it. And so I find myself doing that as a leader myself, going, whether this person is introverted or extroverted, that neither here nor there, but I'm going to modify, or I'm going to allow space, all right, autonomy even for this person on my team or in my businesses to be able to maneuver and be truly them. But if I'm being honest, as a driver, as a big personality, I kind of have to be aware, I have to really be aware of me so that others can shine. Just like in that example. Can you speak to that for a quick second?
Yeah, I mean, that was a master class from Andy Reid on leadership.
Yeah.
I've handled that. If I go back to my first 10 years as a leader, I have made every mistake in the book, and I have not done what Andy Reid did. I mean, I had one scenario in my early 20s where, I got, somebody that kind of Travis Kelce'd me. And instead of building space, I lost my marbles and reacted inappropriately for a CEO, got really upset, had a confrontation. And I remember just really thinking about that later, about the shame I had of being reactive in the moment and not being the person I wanted to be. But it takes time. Like I guarantee you when Andy Reid was 25, like he didn't know how to handle that. Right. And then, so it really, to your point, it's just about understanding like what tools you have at your disposal. And so like, I don't think you're going to see Happy on the football field anytime soon, but not like, for me, I'm a type A personality. I'm a DI. So in Happy, we call that a catalyst because we kind of give everybody a persona, but I've got a lot of fire. And so, knowing where to not react for someone like me is really important. And it's funny you should bring up making space, because like for type A personalities, that's like a really big thing. And I had a business coach in my probably like early 30s, which, I mean, his name's John Delmatoff. And ultimately, like, he's the one that I owe like all of my passion for coaching came from John. He helped me in my career, and he gave me probably some of the best advice that I've ever gotten in my life, which was, I kind of was saying to him, like, God, I'm like so frustrated sometimes, like something happens and I'm like so frustrated and I just like can't, I have a hard time like controlling my emotions. And he's like, well, you're going to have to build a coping mechanism. So what could that be for you? And I'm like trying to think about it. And he goes, how about I'm going to give you one? He's like, you're going to go for a walk, a 60-second walk around the block. And he goes, I don't care where you are. You're in the middle of a meeting with like your leadership team. And you're literally like, hey guys, I got to go to the bathroom. And no, go to the bathroom, walk past the bathroom and just walk around the whole building and come back. That changed my life, Chaz. Like, wow. 60 seconds. I made a lot of laps around the building that year. People are like, where the hell is James? It's like the dude's walking around the building. They're walking me while they see me just walking around the building. I still have the same emotion, but I like modified my response to it. And I'm not always good at it. Like I still have my moments, but that was really good advice. Like, and so I think like, that's what, to your point, like Andy Reid did. He couldn't walk away from the sideline, but he built like that space for himself. Yep. And then he was able to come back and like be responsive. Yeah, and that's like that's what real leadership is to me, is like not reacting in the way you would instinctually do it, but like thinking through like, how am I going to respond in a smart way?
Yeah. I want to give a practical piece on this. We talk a lot about family here on the show as well. I think that family and even marriage plays a huge part into success in business. And so I want to ask you a question on that here in a second, but to tie this in, even with my kiddos, I've got a 4-year-old son who is fiery. Like he's ready to go to war. Like he's been shooting a bow for about a year. I went on a helicopter hog hunt last week and he's like, Dad, like I got my stuff. I'm ready. I'm like, well, you're 4.
That's what we do with our 4-year-olds. We give them weapons when they're fiery.
Yes, give them weapons. He has many of them, which has led me to how to use them, not necessarily stay away from them, how to use them. But regardless, I digress. He's this individual who's going to get angry or frustrated. Maybe that's just him being 4, and maybe all 4-year-olds are like this. My girls weren't quite like this, but he knows to count to 5. Now, he doesn't always remember, and so when he's exploding, all Julie or I have to do is go, whoa, Tatum. And he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he usually smiles and laughs and thinks how ridiculous that this scenario is, that he even got upset about it, hugs his sister, and they go back to playing. And it's like, wow, if I had been not 1, self-aware, 2, aware of just the functionality or the emotional piece that was happening inside of him or my other children, how could I lead him to even be the best version of himself? And this is really what we're talking about in organizations. It's like, okay, as a leader, I'm going to take responsibility for being self-aware. And that means to study myself, to really learn the nuances of how I think or how I act, my emotions. And then how can that interact best with my wife, my team, my kids, my team, my businesses, people on a podcast, whatever. And I think we've given the listeners a lot of practical on that. What do you think about just assessments, maybe even Happy in marriage, in kids? How does that help maybe a high-performing entrepreneur or CEO maybe balance things out a little bit? I don't like the word balance. I like obsession. But how can I lean into some of like that with even a tool like yours.
Boy, you're queuing me up perfect, Chaz. You've done this before.
Just a couple times.
I'm gonna do, since I've done this 6 times in this podcast, I'm gonna do this for the 7th time. I'm gonna turn the question around. So I think what you're saying is like you've discovered the value of self-awareness, and then the assessment is a tool that you use as part of your arsenal, and then that modifies your outcomes, right? Your behaviors.
Yep.
Even you're describing with your family, right? Like if you didn't have that self-awareness, you probably wouldn't even be able to talk to your son about it, right?
Right.
So I think the first part of unlocking the key, whether it's your family, your marriage, your business, your organization, is I think some CEOs, and I think right now this is really important for a CEO or leader, because the world's changing. The future of work's different. Like workers expect more flexibility. They want to work from, they don't all want to work from the office. They want to have a hybrid experience. You know, our Gen Z is looking for totally different things at work that like maybe you and I looked for.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is like, what does a CEO or leader or someone, a family, like you start thinking about it and they go, well, what could I get with a great marriage? Well, you get happiness. What do I get if I have my children that can be adaptable and patient and listen? Well, you get hopefully kids that'll be higher performers in life. But there's one really thing that I think, and it's a controversial thing, but I think a lot of CEOs that don't get it or that haven't gotten it yet say the following words. Well, I know that, you know, having a good culture is important, or I think that, you know, having engaged people is, you know, that's important, but I have other priorities right now. And it's usually followed by like, my board's asking me to grow profits by 20%, or I have a new product line, or like I have some other initiative. And it's this like, this kind of, I call it, you think people like getting people better is like a vitamin. It's like, well, that's just like good. It's like a multivitamin. Like, you know, do I want my people engaged? Sure. But it's like, you know, it's like a bonus. But I really need to have a company that performs.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous because the data, it's not even close. The data shows that that companies that have engaged people and that have high levels of organizational culture and happy employees, they are way more profitable. They are way more productive. They have way more retention. They have better customer reviews. But some people can't see that. And so whether it's your family, your job, your work, you know, your career, your wife, your kids, you've got to start with like, what's your outcome? And, you know, because how many times have you, and look, we've all done this as a parent, you know, your kid has done something that makes you super frustrated and you overreact.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in the moment, that's maybe like you're so frustrated that you just like yell at your child. You're not, I don't mean in a mean way, but you're just like, you know, you're frustrated. But then, you know, what are you teaching your family? And I think of it the same way when a CEO says something like, well, I know that having engaged employees is important, but like we have other priorities. And I think like, what bigger priority is than your humans that work for you every day? Like, I don't care if you buy happy, but like, if people aren't your priority, I guarantee you your organization is not going to perform well over time.
Yeah. We've found the same thing even with, you know, clients, you know, and you're dealing with, you know, really enterprise level. And we've got kind of a little bit of a smorgasbord of size companies inside of a Gathering the Kings mastermind group, but it's the same thing. It's like when you can, I don't know, take the focus off of the thing that you think the focus is, like the result of what culture and happy people and joy and fulfillment and all these things in the workplace or inside the team are the things that you're actually after. But we do this in life, right? Like I want a great marriage, but I'm not willing to date my wife, or I'm too busy for that, or whatever the scenario is, especially as entrepreneurs, because, you know, I'm not organized, or I don't time block, or some of the very basic things that help us just look at intentionality a little differently. what I'm hearing you say is, look, the thing that you actually want, if you would just take a different route, not only do other people get the benefit, you actually get what you want. Am I hearing you right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I would say I spent at least half my life getting this wrong, Chaz, which is just something really simple. Everybody, you mentioned the word like intentionality, and that's a beautiful word, because if you don't live with intention, it's very hard to find a North Star every day. Like, you don't
That's right.
walk around and it doesn't hit you in the face of like, oh, what's my intention for my life? The most difficult exercise I ever went through, I mentioned that business coach, John. So I was going through kind of like a difficult part of my time in my life where I was kind of like confused about my direction of what I wanted to do for the next 10 or 15 years. And I actually had also like an Ayurvedic doctor, which we'll never have time for this, but I had like asked some people I really respect in my life, like to give me some sage advice about the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I kind of got the same advice for both of them. Go take a blank pad of paper, walk into your backyard, sit down on a blanket, and write down, throw money out, forget money. What are the kind of outcomes you want for the rest of your life? Like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Think of the things that are important. Make a list of everything that's important. And I'm like, this is easy. I can throw money out. Money doesn't matter. Like, my salary doesn't matter. I'm going to take this pad of paper and I'm going to like, this blank pad of paper, and I'm going to like walk into my backyard with a pen. And I'm like, this is easy, an hour, and I'm going to like have everything written down. Chaz, I sat back there with this damn pad of paper for 3-4 hours. Dude, I had like, it was like a bad, nightmare. There was nothing left of the pad. It was down to like 4 pages. I had scrumpled up so many papers. They were all writing your life story.
Wow.
It's a lot of hard work, man, to do that. And that's that intentionality that you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you don't have a North Star for yourself, how can you really live your life to its true fulfillment? Like, you can't.
You can't.
But it's hard to do the work. It's really hard. And that's where happy came from. I like literally wrote all this stuff down, and both of my parents were psychologists, which explains a lot about my crazy, brain. But what I ultimately wrote down on that piece of paper is like, man, I want to do something big to help people work better together.
Yeah.
And like that, I just thought about it a lot. I'm like, I got to do this somehow. And that's what eventually drove the next 3 years of my life. But like, if I hadn't sat in that stupid chair in my backyard for like 4 hours, by the way, it wasn't just one day. It was like a week's worth of this over like 3 months. I just felt like a total idiot. Like, who can't plan their life? Like, you can put anything you want. You want a speedboat and go to, Monaco. But when you can do anything, like, really, it's hard. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but it is a hard exercise.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're spot on. First off, I have to say, yes, you're right. The intentionality, sitting down and creating space. Again, here we are, being intentional about time, really is what it is. And going, okay, well, if I'm calm in the moment and I'm not caught up with the passion or the money or the whatever it is that we're talking about, and I'm just thinking and creating space for that, and what's processing, because really what we're allowing in that moment, like truly, and you probably know this from your parents, but I'm allowing a different part of my brain to operate, right? I'm allowing the deeper parts of my thoughts to come out, and it's not just the things that are happening underneath that I'm unaware of, but I'm being conscious of those things now. And so the things that came out of for you, anybody can do. They can take that exercise, and then the intentionality of going, how do I execute on that? Is obviously what you're doing. It's what I'm doing. Gathering the Kings is that for me. I have multiple companies, but Gathering the Kings is part of what that exercise produced in me, which is going, okay, what is this all really about? I've got some skills, I've got some background, I've got some history, I've got some family, but what is this? What am I supposed to do on this ball of mud, right? What's the purpose here? And I think that we will eventually all come to that conclusion as long as there's created space, which is driven from intentionality. And now that I have that, now that you have that, now it's intentionality that carries us through to the completion of that definite chief aim, right? Because there's going to have to be persistence and a push through, and there's going to be conflict and things that we're going to have to overcome. but we hold on to those moments that you create. And it's like, whoa, this is powerful. And I'm going to do it. We are doing it. There's no question on whether Happy is going to be an amazing tool for thousands of employees. You've already decided that, right?
I'll give you, you're right. And I don't tell a lot of people this, but I'm going to share this with you. So, when I did that exercise in my backyard, what I ultimately came down to was like, so I'm 47. So this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I was in my early 40s, and I realized that like money didn't really matter, which money is great. Like, I mean, it's like a nice thing to have. And I'm not trying to say like, I know you talk a little about getting to the point where, I'm not saying self-worth isn't important. I do think it is. I think having goals is important, but ultimately it's not like what the money brings. It's like the value of time and freedom. And but really like, I've spent all these years and I've got a nice house and I've got a nice view and I live in wine country in Temecula. And so it's like this, it's like we live a nice life. But time was the one thing left on that piece of paper. Like, I'm not going to take the rest of the crap with me, but like the time, the intentionality of like how I spend my time, that's like the one thing. Because I could get to 60 and have a hit product and make a bunch of money, but maybe I only have 20 years left to live, right?
Right.
So I write something on the top of my to-do list every day, Chaz. And that is how many days left I have to live. And I estimated my dad lived to 92, my mom lived to mid 80s. So I split the middle and I have 85, I put 85 years, so I'm 47. I write down every day, I subtract 1 day from my likely life expectancy. And there's nothing that has driven the value of time for me more than writing that number down. Because if you really want to think about like, how do you invest your time in your life? Like, that's the one thing is like that, death does not escape any of us.
Yeah.
And whether it's building Gathering the Kings or Happy Companies or anything else we do in life, like that's the one commodity that like can't be bought.
Yeah.
So I think to your point of like really being able to like dial into like where you invest your time, like that's the biggest investment decision you make. Right. And like for you, like this podcast and trying to build like Gathering the Kings for you, it sounds like it's part of your vision of how you want to be intentional about spending your time.
Yeah,
like it's part of your vision for your life. And like the fact that it takes a lot of discipline to do that. And it's beautiful that you're doing that, right? Like the 20-year-old version of Chaz probably doesn't do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting. And we'll circle up with this. But I had a buddy, I don't know, maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago, he tipped me off to an app called Parent Queue. And Parent Queue, you put in your kids' names and their age or their birth date, and then boop, pops up their profile, and it gives you the days left until they turn 18. And it's just like, whoa. And you see it counting down every day, the days left until they're 18. And obviously 18, they're, adults and on and doing their own thing. It doesn't mean that their life is over, but it just means like they're under your care and time's moving. And so that same effect that you just described, I had that a couple of years ago with that, but time, purpose, intentionality. What would you say to the guy, just kind of as a last little piece here, what would you say to the guy or gal listening going like, I want that, but like, I don't even know where to start. James, like, I hear you, working, learning myself and working inside of an environment using tools like Happy and like all that's good. I like check. But for me personally, for you, James, how did you like get to that place where you're just like, okay, something's got to give. I got to do something different or next level. What was it? What can they do? What would you give to them?
It's simple. Figure out what you love. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about success is I think people put money ahead of love and doing what they're passionate about. And my experience has been, if you find the craft that you love, whatever you love, it could be snowboarding, it could be music, it could be whatever it is that just you wake up in the morning and like, that's what you think about. You can make a career about just about anything. Some people love cleaning. And if you love cleaning, you might own a cleaning company, Like you like organizing, you might run a company that organizes projects. If you love wine, you might go own a winery. I just think that tapping into whatever motivates you and gets you up in the morning, that's what I think makes for a great life. Like there's a phrase, and I've hated this for years. And any of my employees or anybody in my company's ever said this, I work for the weekend. Or something like, this is just a job to me. When I get home, I'm, such and such is my passion. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do what you love every day. Like, if you love surfing, that's what you should do. Like, figure out, just do surfing every day. Like, go work in a surf shop, go build surfboards, go make wax, go write for a surfing magazine. Like, do whatever that thing is, whatever, just gets you jacked up about life. Just go do that. And it makes all the other stuff, like we talk about happy and self-awareness and all that stuff is great. But it's really hard to get motivated to become self-aware and build better work relationships when you walk into work every day and you're like, well, this is just a job and I don't even like what I do. And I'm just like going through the motions, because it's hard to get jacked up and excited about self-awareness and your coworkers when you just don't give an ass. Like, you don't care if it doesn't motivate you, all the rest of it doesn't even matter. But when you actually care and you're motivated every day to do something you love, everything else starts falling in place. And now you're like, investing in my self-awareness matters. Investing in my coworkers matters. Investing in learning and education, all that stuff matters because you actually care about what you do. And I think a lot of people, I know this has nothing to do with happy, but I think a lot of people just forget how important it is to find what they love, whatever their craft is. Remember, it comes back to time. You and I talked about time. Shouldn't it be good? Shouldn't you want to invest your time in something that speaks to you right here?
Yeah. I think there's something unique, especially for entrepreneurs, but even for those that are working inside of an organization, their role in that can be exactly what you're talking about. It can be something that they love, and I love how you've given that direction. James, where can someone find Happy? They want to sign up. They want to use the assessment. They want the AI tool to tell me how to work with my boss. Where can they find you?
happycompanies.com.
Love it. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And any other contact information that you want to give to us, it'll be right there in the show notes for you to be able to click on and find James. You have been incredible here today. I cannot wait to see what Happy does and how it continues to revolutionize. And for the assessment that we use, we need to get you attached, it sounds like, because it doesn't even sound like you're in competition. It sounds like you're an overlay. We need to figure out how to get this working, because they're right here in my backyard and we need to get it done. So we're making an introduction. James, I appreciate you being here. Blessings to you, your family, your businesses, all the things that you're touching in 2024. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chaz.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.